Every man carries a certain moment that he can't quite name. It's like a memory that lives like a muscle tension, if you will. And that's the moment that he learned that love was not safe, that to be vulnerable was to be exposed, and that admiration was a safer currency than affection was. That's the root wound there, I think. The one that made us trade intimacy for image. The one that taught us to crave respect, and not because it's not what made us whole, but because it made us feel untouchable. So we didn't become stoic because we were strong. We became stoic because we were scared. And that fear was what calcified into our identity. Here at Bintegers, we believe that real men aren't built from control, they're built through courage. Integrity is the strength, if you will, to stay when everything in you just wants to shut down. And intimacy is that discipline of letting yourself be seen, even when you'd rather hide behind respect, right? And until we heal that root wound, we'll keep mistaking admiration for love and applause for safety. So every man, I think, remembers where that wound began, even if he doesn't know it quite yet. Maybe it was the father who didn't know how to affirm who you were unless you performed, right? Perhaps it was the first woman who withdrew her warmth from you when you couldn't quite meet her expectations. Maybe it was the coach, the teacher, the pastor, the boss, someone who made your worth conditional on being impressive. And so you adapted and you learned that emotion invites correction, not compassion. And that strength earns attention, whereas softness gets you silence. And over time, you stopped showing the parts of yourself that didn't quite look masculine enough. See, we became men who earned affection instead of receiving it. We became men who talk about love like a luxury instead of as a right. And we keep wondering, I think, why we feel respected but unloved, or admired but unseen, ultimately. I think we can trace the root wound through every layer of modern manhood, right? It shows up in how we love, which is like this careful and calculated, cautious way. It shows up in how we lead, right? Through detached, decisive, distant ways. And it even, I think, shows up in how we heal, where it's private and it's secret and it's like shameful for us to be human. So we'll talk about emotional intelligence maybe all day long, but ask us about emotional intimacy and we tend to freeze because the wound isn't just a fear of rejection, it's the fear of being fully met. We don't know what to do with closeness, and we've been trained to trust control but not comfort. And so we settle for the next best thing, which is respect. Respect is clean, right? Respect is predictable. It doesn't ask us necessarily to feel. And so we feel like respect comes with distance. It's intimacy proof, if you will. People could admire us from far off without ever actually seeing us doubting or seeing our tenderness or our longing or our vulnerability. Respect lets us stay armored while we're still appearing strong. And that's the deception there. We think that we have chosen safety, but we've really chosen solitude. And that's why you can have a man who's loved by many, but who's known by none. He's surrounded but starved. He's praised but profoundly alone. Because admiration cannot feed the soul. It can only feed one's ego. And the egos that we have are bottomless, aren't they? They never truly feel full. They're just temporarily distracted. So when we say, I just want respect, I think what we often mean is, I don't trust love. Because love can humiliate you. It can reject you. Love can leave you vulnerable to needs that you swore that you'd never have again. But respect, respect asks you to bleed, right? It lets you control the narrative. It lets you be the author and not the audience, perhaps. But here's the truth that I think undoes every performance, and that's the parts of you that make you lovable are really the same ones that make you also terrified. The vulnerability that you hide is the power that you've really been searching for. So we keep asking the world to honor us when what we really want to be is we want to be held. And that's the conflict that every man has to face, I believe. Do we want to be impressive or do we want to be intimate? Because you can't have both at the same time. Impressing keeps you at arm's length, whereas intimacy brings you face to face, if you will. And when you've been conditioned to equate closeness with danger, connection feels so much like exposure. And this is why so many men prefer the battlefield over the dinner table. Because war gives us a script. You have clear enemies there. You have a clear purpose. But love gives you a reflection. And most men aren't ready to see themselves without the armor on. And that's the tragedy. We keep fighting these battles that make us feel alive because peace really makes us feel invisible. And we don't know who we are without this struggle, right? We don't know how to exist without the performance. But dear listener, there is a difference between peace and passivity. Peace is power that no longer needs to prove itself. And every man reaches a certain point where his accolades just stop numbing him. And where no amount of respect fills that absence of real connection. And that's when the wound starts whispering again. And it's a voice that says something like, if they saw the real you, they would leave, right? That's the voice that was born in our boyhood, I think. And until we confront it, we'll keep letting it run our manhood. So it's time for us to stop running as men. That's the work we do inside the ashes of the alpha male. It's where we stop negotiating our worth through performance and start confronting this wound that keeps chasing validation. So this course, In the Ashes of the Alpha Male, it helps you realize where the pattern began, where maybe it was the father wound or the cultural script that you subscribed to or the emotional starvation you experienced. But it's a deep dive continuation that takes you into integration, learning how to be loved without losing your edge, learning how to stay open without collapsing, learning that you can be more. You can find this at Bintegers.com. It's not about becoming softer as much as it is about becoming whole. But respect feels safer because it's predictable, right? But safety without intimacy becomes emptiness. And you can only armor your heart for so long before it starts to rust. And when it does, life starts feeling flat and you can't taste joy anymore. You can't rest even when you stop moving. You've achieved everything you thought you would need to fill that gap, and it's still there. And that's when you know it's not ambition that's driving you, it's more so avoidance. And the only way out is through the fear, through the discomfort, through the silence that you've been drowning out with all the noise around you. Because every wound that we, in essence, avoid becomes this wall that we live behind. And my dear listener, that's no way to live. You were made to be seen, not just saluted. You were made to be loved and not just respected. You were made to be known and not just remembered. And the world doesn't need your perfection. The world needs your presence. And that's perhaps the hardest thing for a man to do. And it's not to fight, but it's to feel. It's to let that armor fall long enough to let love do what it was meant to do, and that's to restore, not weaken. Because love doesn't make you smaller, love makes you more sustainable. It gives you the strength that doesn't need to have a crowd or a title or applause to feel real. That's manhood right there. That's mastery, I would say. That's what peace could feel like. So we're in essence unlearning these centuries of conditioning, generations of men who've been confused with stoicism and they thought that was better than stability, and pride for purpose. We're reclaiming what was lost in translation, and that's the right to be powerful and present. The right to be seen without having the fear of being shamed. The right to love deeply without losing our dignity. This is the rebirth of manhood, I think. Not the loud posturing version, but the quiet, congruent version. And so you can trace the healing of a man by the gentleness in his strength. Because once he's no longer fighting for his worth, his power now becomes protective and not performative. And he stops now needing to be feared and now starts learning how to be trusted. And that shift from control to congruence, that's when he finally starts living. In tomorrow's episode, we're going to talk about what happens when that gentleness begins to return, when the courage to feel becomes the new definition of strength, because vulnerability is not the end of masculinity, it's really the rebirth of it. But that's in tomorrow's episode, titled The Courage to Feel. I hope I'll see you there. Thanks for listening in. Drop me a comment. I'd love to hear from you. Bye.